we can argue about tariffs, but why does the president have to lie all of the time in order to make his point?
I mean, the president very rightly hit on this issue of fentanyl migration coming from northern southern borders, and it's a real emergency.
All Congress has not had 1 ounce of authority in determining tariff policy. Do you think Congress should be completely left out of the process? Or does the president have emergency power to do anything he wants with regard to tariffs?
Senator, my staff has had over 200 meetings with congressional offices in the past 2 months to consult. The president's been very transparent about what he wants to do on tariffs.
Do you have any concerns about all of that power going into the hands of the president?
Sir, Congress delegated this power to the president.
Sanders zeroed in on Donald Trump's abuse of presidential powers to slap tariffs on Canada under the false claim of a national emergency. Tariffs are taxes on imports, and while Trump sold them as a way to punish foreign countries, the reality is that American consumers and workers end up paying the price.
Let me begin by saying, as I suspect you know, that I am not a great fan of unfettered free trade. I helped lead the effort when I was in the House against NAFTA and against permanent normal trade relations with China. I will never forget a visit that I made to the Macadillo area in Mexico, where I saw brand new factories and literally Mexican workers living in cardboard boxes. And the result, of course, was the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs, good paying jobs in this country, transferring them to Mexico where people work for horrendous wages. That is the type of trade policy which I detest. But I want to move to an area to talk about the legal basis of what President Trump has done. President Trump said, Mr. Greer, that he had no choice in terms of Canada, and I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. He had no choice but to bypass Congress and to impose an emergency 25% tariff on Canada to stop, quote, the massive, end quote, amount of fentanyl and, quote, the millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from the northern border. Unfortunately, that's a lie. The truth is that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported just 43 pounds of fentanyl were seized at the Canadian border last year, representing just 0.2% of the total. Now, we could agree that 1 pound of fentanyl is too much. But if 0.2% constitutes an emergency, my guess is illegal drugs are coming in from every country in the world. And that gives the President of the United States incredible power to determine tariffs. Further, he said he talked about millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from Canada. In fact, last year there were 24,000 people, not millions and millions. First question, really, we can argue about tariffs, but why does the president have to lie all of the time in order to make his point?
So, Senator, I would just refute that when the president is talking about the nature of the emergency we have. I mean,
Can you talk a little bit closer into the mic, please?
Certainly. Senator, I would just say, I think you need to look at what the president issued in terms of the order for the legal basis for what we're doing, right? I mean, the president very rightly hit on this issue of fentanyl migration coming from northern southern borders, and it's a real emergency.
Drugs are a real emergency. 0.2%. You can then argue illegal drugs come from every country in the world. If you declare that as an emergency, you're giving the President of the United States unbelievable power. Let me go on that point. Let me mention to you what you probably know. 7 Republicans have joined a number of Democrats on legislation reasserting Congress's ability to play an active role in trade and tariffs. That, on the Republican side, was led by Senator Grassley. And he said, and I quote, "For too long, Congress has delegated its clear authority to regulate interstate and foreign commerce to the executive branch, et cetera, et cetera." He wants to reassert Congress's constitutional role and ensure Congress has a voice in trade policy, end of quote. In the last 2 weeks, all we have seen is reports in the newspaper. Congress has not had 1 ounce of authority in determining tariff policy. Do you think Congress should be completely left out of the process? Or does the president have emergency power to do anything he wants with regard to tariffs?
Senator, my staff has had over 200 meetings with congressional offices in the past 2 months to consult. The president's been very transparent about what he wants to do on tariffs. Congress delegated a law to him to take this action.
Mr. Greer, you can have all the meetings you want. You and I had a nice meeting. But at the end of the day, the president did exactly what he wanted to do without any formal discussion with members of Congress. He could make recommendations to Congress, that's for sure. Do you really think that he has the power under an emergency degree to reorder the trade world, global trade policy, without any input from the United States Congress?
Sir, Congress gave him this law where if he determines a national emergency, he can take appropriate action to regulate imports. That's what he's done.
And you think it's a national emergency, the 0.2% of fentanyl coming from Canada constitutes a national emergency?
Sir,
Do you?
The president has determined that
Do you?
Canada,
I'm asking you.
You're asking me about drug policy. So I agree with the president. If you have China and Canada and Mexico putting drugs into this country at different levels, then that's an emergency. We have to deal with it.
Look, we're not going to argue about the danger
sir.
of drugs. 43 pounds of fentanyl. On that basis, the president can declare an emergency with any country on earth and take unlimited power. That's called authoritarianism. Okay? That's not what a democracy does. Do you have any concerns about all of that power going into the hands of the president?
Sir, Congress delegated this power to the president. He has to renew the emergency every year. He has to give reports to Congress. The Congress told him what he has to do to use this authority, and he's doing those things.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
What you just watched was Bernie Sanders doing what he has done for decades, cutting through political spin and calling out the dangerous use of lies to justify policies that hurt working people. Let's unpack this. Farmers in the Midwest, manufacturers, and even small businesses faced higher costs because of these tariffs. Instead of carefully crafted trade policy debated in Congress, Trump unilaterally pulled the emergency lever, using fear about drugs and immigration to bypass democratic processes. Here's the problem. Trump justified his action by claiming massive amounts of fentanyl and millions of undocumented immigrants were flooding in from Canada. But the actual facts show that less than half of 1% of fentanyl seizures came from the northern border. And as Sanders pointed out, the claim of millions and millions of migrants was wildly false. Just 24,000 people were apprehended, not millions. Those aren't minor errors. Those are deliberate fabrications used to expand presidential power. This matters beyond the numbers. If a president can point to a sliver of an issue and call it an emergency, then declare sweeping tariffs without Congress, that is not democracy. That's creeping authoritarianism. Our system of government was designed with checks and balances for a reason. Congress holds the power over trade policy, not the White House alone. Even Republican Senator Chuck Grassley has warned that Congress needs to reclaim its constitutional role in regulating commerce. That shows how dangerous this precedent is. It's not just Democrats worried about it. Think about the implications. If Trump or any president can invoke emergency powers with flimsy evidence, they can reorder global trade on a whim, destabilize industries, and hurt everyday Americans, all while shutting out elected representatives from the decision-making process. That's a power grab disguised as policy. Sanders' larger point here isn't just about tariffs or fentanyl. It's about honesty, accountability, and democracy itself. If leaders resort to lies to justify decisions, and if Congress allows itself to be sidelined, then we are drifting away from representative government into something much darker. This is why Sanders' confrontation is so important. He's not simply arguing over numbers. He's defending the principle that government decisions, especially those that impact the entire economy, must be rooted in truth, debated openly, and shared across branches of power. Otherwise, we end up with decisions made in secrecy, based on fear, that primarily benefit the wealthy and powerful while ordinary families pay the price. And this isn't theoretical. Trump's trade wars led to higher consumer costs, retaliatory tariffs that punished American farmers, and uncertainty for businesses that rely on stable trade relations. When you strip away the political theater, these policies hit workers the hardest, the very people Trump claimed to champion. So here's the takeaway. Democracy requires truth, transparency, and shared power. When presidents distort facts to seize more authority, it is up to Congress and to us as citizens to push back. If we don't, the precedent of governing by emergency decree becomes normalized, and our democracy erodes piece by piece. This is why Bernie Sanders' voice matters in this debate. He's reminding us that economic policy isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about people, honesty, and the kind of democracy we want to live in. If you believe in protecting truth and democracy from authoritarian creep, now is the time to stay informed, to hold leaders accountable, and to support policies that put working people first. What do you think? Should Congress reclaim its authority over trade policy, or should presidents have the unchecked power to declare emergencies and impose tariffs?